The Legacy Files with Grant Cameron.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron, and I have a new episode of the Legacy Files. And we are talking about various things on here. Desta, my assistant and co-author, has joined me from Ontario on the other side of the country. And we are busy putting together a Patreon now where we're going to put some piles of stuff on. But today I want to comment just on a interview that was done by Nick Pope on a podcast called Area 52. I thought he raised a number of interesting things that I could comment on. Nick ran the what in the States they call a UFO weird desk. He called it the UFO desk at the Minister of Defense in Great Britain, I think for 3 years, from 93 to 96. He was involved in a number of cases, and he had an interview. And I'm just going to sort of go through the notes here. And if you got any questions, just jump in, Desta. But um, he talked about one of these experiences that Des and I have heard about, that we've got a couple of that we're going to put out. And this, he talked about when he's asked about all the weird cases. And he talked about this one where a bunch of people walk into an art shop. And this came to the Ministry of Defense, and they go in this art shop, and they're like really bizarre looking. We have these cases that one we're going to talk about at Mount Shasta, where they look kind of weird, and it's like, what are they doing? And they're not really, and people are wondering, they're sort of out of place, and they come up and they buy a pencil at the end, and they use £100 note from to pay for this pencil. And then when they give the money back, these people don't know what to do. They don't know, they don't understand why they're giving money back or what this they're giving back. And then everybody was, "Are these aliens?" And they actually phoned, I think the police, or and Nick there was contacted about this as well. So that was one of the things I found interesting, because it's sort of, there's a bunch of these cases where people will say somebody was in there and they look kind of weird, and it's this whole thing of contact where you talk to people who've actually had interactions. So even Timothy Good had one where he said you can contact anybody, can contact an alien every time they want. Go into a very busy place like a big airport or something where there's lots of people around, and just sit there and wait and say, "I want you to identify yourself." And he claims that people will. And he told me the story about being in the New York rail station or something. And this guy appeared, and then he said, "If you're an alien, put your finger to your nose." And the guy went like this. And this is like the guy who wrote UFOs Above Top Secret. This is a major researcher in Great Britain for many, many years. And so Nick started talking about that. I think that was one interesting thing that he talked about. Um, we have the Stan Romanek case is another one that these weird people. In fact, Stan Romanek's wife, who maybe I can even no, I don't know, maybe I can even get her on an interview. I know I could talk to Stan on the phone, but they actually had one where the hybrid, they actually got photographs of the hybrid. This girl sitting in the UFO conference and stuff like that. Then he goes on to Rendlesham Forest, and he confirmed a theory. And I'm not sure. We'll maybe try to put it. It's in one of my books. We'll identify. Do you remember what book I was in where I talked about the nuclear weapon thing, the connection between UFOs and nuclear weapons, the idea that Travis Walton, when Travis Walton was taken, every single night that Travis Walton was gone, there was a UFO over a nuclear weapons storage area, or a nuclear weapon, or a silo, UFO nuclear silo. And so Nick talked about this, and he confirmed the one that I put in for many times. I've written a whole thing about connecting major events with UFO, with nuclear events. And the one that I always said, people talk about Rendlesham Forest. So everybody thinks it's like random. And this is where you get this idea, is it random or is this pattern? And everything is random. These aliens got lost, and they were at Rendlesham, and they were looking for a part for their UFO craft, and they wanted to get it, and they flew it in from Germany, all this nonsense about the craft being in trouble. And then you have the other story where the craft comes three different nights. It shoots a beam down into the nuclear weapon storage area. And that is the key part, is when they asked the Pope about it, he said, "I can neither confirm nor deny." When they asked about nuclear weapons, because there was not supposed to be any American nuclear weapons on Great Britain at that time. So the story was that they had seen this beam go into the nuclear weapon storage area. And the key was to get the event. Now, the event, I said, and this Nick Pope actually confirms in this interview, and he was with the Ministry of Defense at the time, and that was the fact that there was an event taking place in Poland where Solidarity had taken over the country, and that Brezhnev had gone to Poland and said they had this big military exercise with Czechoslovakia, Russia, and I can't remember the third country, East Germany, and they said this is a military exercise. But it could turn into the real thing. You're to call martial law. You're to stop this. You're to get back this country because if you fall, then all the Soviet countries will fall. It's all going to fall apart. And that happened at this buildup of troops on the Polish border happened at the end of December 1980. And the key to Rendlesham Forest was that the Rendlesham Forest had in their silos not big nuclear weapons like we have in Canada, in the United States, or in the United States. It had the tactical nuclear weapons that would be used on the battlefield, that would be used at the Polish border if they were to defend Poland. This is the kind of stuff you would use. And so the idea was that the UFOs had shut down the nuclear weapons. And the other thing that people don't realize is that at exactly the same time, the day after, there's 3 days, and the fourth day happened was the Cash-Landrum in the United States, the big Cash-Landrum case. And that was the one with the 24 helicopters and the UFO was spewing radioactive material or whatever. And these three women were contaminated. And Fort Hood had nuclear weapons, which was right near there. And there's all these different spots. If you look on the Pantex plant where they had a nuclear storage, they had Pershing nuclear missiles, they had all this stuff around that nuclear thing, but it happened at exactly the same time. And these are sort of like signals. Like the UFOs don't really give you a lecture. There's all these symbols, and you sort of figure it out. Like the abduction that took place in Mississippi. What was the big Mississippi one? It was outside the plant where they built the nuclear submarines. That happened during the 73 Yom Kippur War, where the prime minister of Israel was loaded nuclear weapons onto planes. They were losing, and they were going to use these nuclear weapons. And that's when the big abduction took place in Mississippi with these guys outside the nuclear weapons plant there. So that was a theory I had, was the fact that the nuclear weapons, if you start looking at the major Pascagoula, same as the one we were talking about, giving away some of these pieces from the Falcon Lake case. Falcon Lake happened May the 25th, 1967. That was about 2 weeks before the Six-Day War. And the Six-Day War was all about the fact that the first nuclear weapons were being assembled by the Israelis, and the Russians and the Syrians actually tried to bomb the plant during the Six-Day War. They tried to take out Dimona because it was the same thing as what's happening in Iran right now. Is you take them out before they build the nuclear weapons. That's what was going on here. They tried to attack. That's what the Six-Day War was about. It was about destroying Dimona, the nuclear power plant, and there was all this front thing that there's supposedly a war, and the war had nothing to do with anything. It was just a front for the Syrians coming in and trying to bomb the plant. And the first four were shot down by the Israelis. The last two Syrian jets came in and they actually made it, but they dropped the bomb short of the Dimona site. They actually got these bombs, but they missed the target. So this is this whole deal that you see these connections when you start looking at all this kind of stuff. And the other thing that would go into that is this idea that people think that the injuries are coming from being too close to the UFOs, and that would be the case in the one in the Cash-Landrum thing, where all three of them were contaminated with nuclear. But if you take a look at the Rendlesham Forest, there was three guys that were there when this thing flared up. There was Peniston, Kabanzak, and Burroughs, and only Burroughs was injured. And I always say to people, why was Burroughs the only one injured? If this was radioactive, which everybody still says there was a contamination of radioactive, why was Peniston and Kabanzak not injured? And the key was this idea, the story that Kabanzak said, that when this thing flared up, Peniston said, open fire. John pulled his gun and he got zapped. And so that would make the thing where, this idea, don't take a CE5, don't take a gun to a CE5. What was the other thing that I'm looking at, the other things that he talked about? I think they talked about, again, this thing about Trump being briefed, which is pretty weird. Trump being briefed on the white aliens, the tall, the tall whites, and the DNA, and it's like the white aliens. He got briefed on the white aliens, and that it sort of affected his worldview. And that again came from David Grush, and some people say that Grush may even have given the interview. He did come in after, because this apparently happened during the impeachment, which was in the spring of 2021, and Grush came in after that. So it may have been that, or came in before that. So it may have been true, but it was this idea that it changed his worldview, but it hasn't really changed anything in terms of him releasing stuff. He still hasn't released anything, and I say one of the main factors is that this is a presidential controlled subject. It's the White House that runs it. So is the White House going to out itself and say we're the ones that have been lying all these years? And the president's the one that's been covering up for 14 administrations, stuff like that. And it really doesn't have much to do with anybody outside. It's run out of the White House and has all these people working for it. So that's just some comments. I didn't see. Let me see if there's any of the other ones here. It was a very interesting interview. If people want to listen to this Nick Pope interview about stuff that was going on and his view of the world and all this kind of stuff. I was just kind of surprised that he confirmed the nuclear weapons, the same as now you and I published the book UFO Sky Pilots, and it's unbelievable. Since we published that book like 3 years ago, everybody's talking about this thing about the crash, the craft is conscious and it's artificial intelligence and all this kind of stuff, and as if they discovered this. And this is we had this out for 3 years, so it's getting more validation all the time. More and more people are coming out saying that yeah, this is a main factor that. There's this artificial intelligence involved with the UFO, and we're trying to back engineer it. Even I was listening to an interview with Lou Elizondo today talking about using the pilot's helmets to steer the craft, taking the brain waves and stuff like that. So you can see that DARPA's been working on this. It wouldn't be stupid. They would take the ideas, and because we put out the book, now everybody's allowed to talk about it, because it just seems like everybody's talking about the craft being alive and you're using your mind to fly the craft, which I remember when I first heard it in 2013, I thought woman was insane. And then we got enough cases, we put them out, and we may do a second book. We've got a bunch of people that have come forward since then that are telling the same story or telling it from a government perspective. So we may do a second book on that, but we'll leave it at that unless you have any questions, Desta.
No.
No. Yeah, some of these interviews, I spend most of my day just walking around listening to these interviews, and I'll pick up from time to time interesting stuff, which we'll sort of bring up here, and we'll just try to keep people informed, and that's what we want. Open disclosure as much as we can, and I'm looking forward to the day when we can see some of Desta's courses that also link all the other stuff, the contact modalities, which is one of the key ideas that we sort of got um, uh, from who did we get it from? I was Ray Hernandez. Yeah, Ray Hernandez. We're going to actually interview Ray Hernandez
This
here
month.
in the next couple of weeks. And that was one of the big things that sort of changed everything, that people are actually also referring to that, this idea that there are just modalities, that everything is in the field and people are getting access to the field. So we've had a lot of people buy the book and comments and stuff, and we're going to do some sessions, right, on the contact modalities. We'll take them one by one. I think there's 70 of them. We'll go through some of them, and then people will start to see, once you've seen one after another, and how they all connect, that this is a puzzle that they're sort of giving us. The disclosures controlled by the phenomena, and it's giving us these little breadcrumbs to lead us along with all these different phenomena. And they're all basically, if you come down to, they're all basically the same thing. It's all consciousness. It's all connected. And I just sort of feel honored that I got to play this wonderful game of living in this world where all these weird things happen, and people are telling us things that are just almost unbelievable, but we know they're real.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next Legacy podcast.
Exactly. Thanks, Grant.